welcome or welcome back. My name is Freya. I live in Glasgow with my wife Greena and my two cats Kuska and Nanook. If you've been here before, then you will know I usually make knitting videos. However, recently, within the last just over a year, I've really jumped head in to sewing, and recently I've really gotten into quilt making. My last video was also a process vlog of me making the Quilt by Trojan Sew, I think, and this is my next quilt process vlog of me making the Sunny Quilt by Tara Falcon. So I hope you all enjoy the video. It's there's a bit of talking, there's a bit of time lapses, and you will see me going from getting the fabric, making the quilt top, all through the process until right to the end, and you'll see the final product at the end. So I hope you all enjoy this video. If you do, like the video, give it a like, and if you want to see more, subscribe, because I have more quilty videos coming up. So I apologise if you're not really into that, but I'm really into it at the moment. So yes, I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope you like the final quilt as much as I do. It is day one, and I have already ironed all of the fabric, which was about 15 meters of fabric. So yeah, it was a lot. I think it took maybe an hour. But as I was ironing, one colour was transferring onto my hands, and actually it had transferred onto one of the other fabrics that it was next to when it got shipped, and it was this dark navy. And it was transferring so much that I kind of was like, I think I'm gonna pre-wash this colour. I really didn't want to, but just me handling it a little bit is transferred onto my hands. So I'd rather try and solve the problem before it's a problem. So I'm gonna go and just hand wash that with some vinegar, etc., and hopefully the colour won't run anymore, and then I shall start cutting out all of the pieces. I'm quite nervous. I really like the colours that I chose, but I just don't know how it's going to end up. I just can't visualise it properly, and I hope it doesn't end up looking too messy in the final quilt. So yeah, fingers crossed it's going to work out, but I'm not going to cut out too many pieces just yet, just a couple per colour, and then put all those together, evaluate what I like, what I don't like, and then go and cut out more and sew more. I feel like that's a good way to go about it. So I'm going to go and wash that fabric and yeah, then cut out. a little bit carried away cutting out that colour. But yeah, so I've cut out as much as I want to of this colour. I've gone a bit over the top. I'll not need to cut out any more of this colour. For the other colours I want to cut out less. But so the idea is for each square it takes 4 different shapes, but basically this will be the background colour and then this extra shape will be the pop of colour in each one. So you need 3 of these shapes, you need 1 of each of these, and then 7 of these, and then you need 6 of these. So I think I have 10 background pieces and 8 pops of colour, which will definitely do me for the whole quilt probably. So yeah, that's it for this colour. I'll not touch it again, but I'm going to go and cut out the other colours. I'm going to do less, probably 6. I'll start with 6 for each colour because I don't want to come back and I want to get the majority of the cutting out of the way without cutting too much. So I'm going to go and do that. The colour that I washed is outside drying. It's like the perfect day for drying, so that definitely is going to be dry by the time I'm finished cutting these colours. I don't even think I'm going to be able to finish cutting this today because it takes quite a long time. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to finish that today, but I'm going to try. Day 2, towards the end of day 2 actually. Yesterday I think I managed to cut out 7 colours, and then today I have cut out the rest. It took longer than what I was expecting. I was also a lot more physically demanding than what I was expecting. Last night I felt crippled. I was in quite a lot of pain. Today I feel better. My hands and my knees and my hips still hurt, but yes, it was a bit better today. But anyway, I have now cut out all 13 of my colours, and I actually made a little thing for myself to keep track of everything that I've cut out, because in the end it's quite a lot, because I need 120 squares. And yeah, so in the end I managed to get 8 background groups of shapes and 8 little pots of colours from every colour, and that works out to be 104, I think, total squares. So once I put all of those together, I'll only have 16 left to sort of think about. So now I'm going to put all of my colours onto the table, and I'm going to start picking out a few to put together into squares, because I want to kind of start being able to really visualise what the colour's going to look like together in the squares. So I'm going to do that now, and if I have time I'll maybe get to sew up one maybe, but it's getting quite late. So yes, I'm going to put all the colours on here, and hopefully the colours will work together. I'm quite worried about it because it is quite a few colours to pick to make go together. It is now the next day and I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about my colour choices, and I'm very excited to start putting the squares together to really see what they look like. I have managed to sort of configure this back area into a more efficient quilting space, because this is foundation paper piecing, and so it requires you to press every seam after you've sewn it. So before, when I did my practice squares, I had my sewing machine here and then my ironing board up there, so I would get up and stand up to iron every seam, and obviously that wasn't very efficient. So I've managed to sort of fit everything in such a way where I can just go from here to here. Unfortunately, it is the only place in the house where the tumble dryer fits, so I couldn't move that. But yeah, so now I'm gonna cut out this, I'm gonna sort out my machine, maybe clean it, that's probably a good idea actually. next day, and yesterday I managed to sew together 7 squares altogether, which I feel like is pretty good going. And so today, this morning, I decided to pair up everything that I'd cut out. Originally I thought I would pair up half, but then as I started I thought I might as well just do all of it whilst I can see what colours have already gone together and all of that. I have made the decision for every square to be different, so I ended up writing down what colour has already been paired together, and hopefully I'll manage to not get any duplicates of the squares, which is great. And now the plan of action of how to sew these the most efficient way, I think, is I'm going to take every background colour and batch sew them together. That way I can keep the same colour thread on the machine, and also I think I'll be able to sew every seam one after each other, the same way I did with my last quilt, which really will make it go a lot faster, because then I can do all the seams, press all the seams, and then come back, because there's a lot of going back and forth. Also, I have really hurt my hips. That is one place where my hypermobility really affects quite badly, and I think because I'm using my legs and my feet to move myself from here to here to here, so if I can limit the amount of times I need to do that, I think I will, maybe be in less pain, which is great. And yeah, so I also realised yesterday that I didn't even go into any detail about what foundation paper piecing is, and I am by no means a teacher and this isn't a tutorial, but I thought I'd quickly touch on what I'm doing. So it is foundation paper piecing, but I'm not doing the technique where you actually sew through the paper. I'm doing the technique where you fold the paper back and then sew the seam. That way you can reuse the templates, and in my mind I definitely think this is a technique that I would prefer. I've not tried sewing through the paper, but I think if I was to do that and then I was have to rip back every template, and there's 120 squares, and that's quite a lot of work. So yeah, I think this one clicks with my brain a bit more than that one anyway. So I think it's a little bit more time efficient and easier for me to kind of get my head around. I'm going to do maybe a little close-up of each step to kind of, show kind of what I'm doing. And yes, then today hopefully I will get through all of this bright pink colour. I think I said before, yesterday or the day before, that I had cut out 8 of every colour, which means if I do 8 squares, i.e. every colour, all 8 squares of one colour a day, it'll take me about 2 weeks to do the whole quilt top. Probably longer, I would assume, because that is me, that's like best case scenario of me being able to put in a chunk of time every day. But I'm quite happy for this to be a much more mindful project where I really do take my time. I feel I'm in the mood, I'm in the zone to have a mindful project where, I'm not getting frustrated that it's taking longer. Instead, I'm actually enjoying slowing down and really being present with what I'm doing. Yeah, that was a bit of a tangent, but anyway, Today I'm going to go ahead and sew all of the pinks. Okay, so starting with this one, this will be my pop of colour, and I'm just going to start by sticking this one down onto the section that is marked A. Just a little bit of glue, stick that down, and then go to the iron and iron that so that the glue sticks. Now that I'm back over here, I'm just going to turn this over and fold this little part back. Grab a ruler and my rotary cutter, and I'm going to trim this part down to 1/4 of an inch. Okay. Turn it back over, get the pink, put that over the top, and then very carefully flip this over and sew down that seam. Now I'm going to take this over to the ironing board. I'm just going to press this pink part over. Okay, and I'm going to flip this back over, fold it back on the right line, and then trim this to 1/4 of an inch again. Now, doing the same, this is the right side, so making sure, if it was a pattern, I'd make sure that the right sides were going together, but these don't have a right side. And then basically just repeat that whole thing over and over again. So I've gone ahead and sewn that next pop of colour on, and this is where it's a little bit different. I'm going to make sure I press this seam back the way, because I want every seam to end up in these smaller background slithers. I'm doing that because I am going to be hand quilting this quilt, and I want to be able to quilt over no seams. So I'm pressing them onto here so that I can hand quilt these larger sections, and these smaller sections will be fine to leave unquilted. Also, the difference for when I sew a pop of colour is that's when I glue it down to the paper. I don't bother doing the smaller sections because they are so small, so glue that down, take it over to the ironing board. Okay, iron that down, and then literally repeat that whole process. Now that I've finished sewing all the bits, I'm going to trim it down before I sew the other parts. Now that that's all trimmed, I'm going to go ahead and take off the paper. Now that's cut out, I'm going to start with the little section that goes on this part. I'm going to fold it in half and then just make a little crease in the middle. put it in the center and I'll pin all the way around. I went ahead and did the exact same steps for this curved edge and gave it all a final press. So this is what it looks like from the front, and then this is what it looks like from the back. So all of the seams are pressed nicely into this one section, which means when I go back and hand quilt these sections here, I'll not be going over the additional fabric here. Once I've done all of the squares, I'll go ahead and trim these to size. I believe it's an 8 by 8 inch square. It's not too wonky right off the back, but these definitely need straightened and stuff. And yeah, that's the process of making this square. It has been over 2 weeks, I would say, since I last filmed. Ideally I would have been finished the squares by now, but life just gets in the way like that. So yes, I've not finished, but I am over halfway. This is my big stack of squares. I think I have 73 and I need 120. So yeah, definitely halfway, over halfway. And I feel like I'm getting a bit more momentum now to finish them. I think a couple of colours in, I really was struggling a little bit because yeah, the goal just seemed so huge that it just felt like I would never get there. Guys, come on. They're fighting. Kiska, say hello. Yeah, it just felt like I would never reach the end, but now I feel like the end is in sight. So I've definitely got a rhythm now about what is the most the best way to go about it and the best way that won't waste any time. Like, I'm happy I'm happy to spend time on this, like I was saying before, but I also don't want to waste time, if you know what I mean. Like, I want it to be the most efficient way of doing it. So I grouped the squares together by background colour so that I can use the same thread, and what I'll do is I'll sew each segment seam, and then I'll go over and I'll press them all at the same time. So going back and forth like that is the best use of my time, really. And yeah, so I've just that's what I've been doing, just over and over. Guys, let's not fight, please. Just over and over, just different colours. But I am very excited to finish this, and I don't really see the point in filming any of the sewing because it's literally exactly the same, just in different colours. So the next time I see you, although I've not got all of my squares cut out, I think I cut out 108 maybe, and I need 120, so I do need to go back and decide what colours I want extra of and all of that. So yeah, maybe I'll see you then. If not, I will see you when I put all of the squares together. I feel like that's going to be just hundreds and hundreds of little decisions about what colours go where, and it's definitely going to take a long time. I'm kind of dreading it and I'm kind of looking forward to it, so fingers crossed it'll not take me too long to get to that stage. Yesterday I managed to lay all of the squares out and pair the colours together, and I think it was actually a smaller task than that I built it up in my head to be. My original plan was to sort of lay them all out and then move them about to try and get the best overall visual effect, but it turned out that, you know, I was sort of laying them out, I was editing as I went, and then in the end I was like, I don't even see the point in moving any of these about, because I mean it's going to look random anyway, and I think I paired the colours together nicely and the squares together nicely, and yeah, I don't think I could do a better job, to be honest. And then after I finished that, I went ahead and trimmed around all of the squares, and that was so painful. I was pressing down with my hand and then cutting around the template, and it just hurt so much. I had to keep stopping and massaging my hand with my massage gun because it was very, very painful. But I managed to get that all done, and then I even managed to sew one whole strip together. I think it took me around an hour, and I have 5 more strips to do. I'm hoping to get them all done today unless something pops up, but yeah, hopefully I'll get them all done today. I didn't film that yesterday because I didn't really feel like it, but I'll film a few clips today of me doing that, and then it's on to the sewing the strips together and then making the sandwich. And making the sandwich for my last quilt was quite painful, I'm not gonna lie, it was quite painful. Just the way I was like crouching down and moving stuff about, but I did actually really enjoy it, so I am quite excited to sandwich this all together. I don't know if I'll get it done tomorrow because it's my birthday. I want to go out for a meal, maybe do a couple of shops in town and then come back, and hopefully if I've got enough time I do actually want to do the sandwiching tomorrow, but I don't know, we'll see how it goes. since I last did a talkie bit, and I think I was saying how I wanted to sandwich the quilt the day after I filmed, and I did manage to do that. I sandwiched it all, and then that was all I managed to get done that day, but it was quite physically taxing. The quilt did end up shrinking after I had trimmed off the excess, like trimmed it to size and then sewed it all up, because there was a ½ inch seam allowance on every square, so yeah, if you kind of add that up, it definitely shrunk, which made it a much more manageable size, which I'm not complaining about. But yeah, I managed to do that, and afterwards I was quite sore. It was quite painful to get into all of the different positions I had to lay it out and put the pins in and all of that, but I ended up using my entire box of pins, which I think was 200, so I'm glad I got the bigger box of those because I literally had the perfect amount, which is great. And then the day after that, we ended up going to Loch Lomond, and then when I came back I was even more exhausted just from straining my muscles doing the sandwiching and then also just walking and general hypermobility stuff. But last night I did actually manage to do one little square because I was just itching to see what the hand quilting would look like, because I am kind of coming at it at a different angle from my last quilt because the thread is so much thinner and the stitches are so much smaller. So a couple of things, like my initial reflections, is that I calculated it's going to be about 3 months of hand quilting. So yes, that's a lot, and if I think about it like that, then technically I'm only a quarter of the way through. So yes, that's something. But saying that, I am actually having a much better time hand quilting this one because I'm able to use a smaller needle and smaller thread, and the thread is actually made for hand quilting. It's already like waxed, so it's not getting knotted and it's going a lot smoother, but also because I'm using a thinner needle, there's a lot less like resistance. Like it glides through the material a lot easier, which I feel like it feels like it's going faster in that aspect, but at the same time I'm doing much smaller stitches, so I don't know, maybe it cancels each other out. But ultimately I do love the effect, and yeah, do some close-up videos of it. But yeah, it's pretty intense but I love the outcome, and it's definitely going to be an heirloom piece that I will never ever be able to part with. But hopefully if we're lucky enough to have kids, I will be forcing them to take it, or just respect the amount of time and effort I put into it, and then hopefully they will love it also and I will pass it down, which will be nice. And I'm not mad that it's going to take a long time because, you know, materials are expensive, and if I manage to get like 4 months worth of entertainment out of it, I feel like that worked out to be pretty good. And also I am enjoying it, and I feel like it's going to be a little less physically taxing compared to my other quilt, just because of like the less resistance and all of that, and also like when I'm popping the knots, I'm not having to like make a hole in the fabric and then pull it through. Like it's just popping into the fabric and it's just all working, touch wood, pretty seamlessly. I am only on the like edge of the quilt, so I'm sure once I'm in the middle of the quilt it's gonna get a little bit more tricky, but hopefully I still enjoy it at the end. This is an absolutely terrible angle, but I don't want to move furniture about to lay it out again. But it's been about a week and a half since I started hand quilting this, and I wanted to jump on and sort of do an update before I sort of pivot. And anyway, I'll explain why I want to do an update now. So I began at the bottom edge here and I was working my way up, drawing as I go. Then I thought, because this is going to take so long and I'm going to be handling it so much, I'm better off going up all the sides so that then I can do like a little stay stitch all across the edge, so that when I continue the quilting in the middle, there's no stress on the edges and they won't fray so much. So that's what I started to do. However, when I was doing my first row here, I decided that I needed to add another colour of hand quilting thread. I didn't think quite as well when I was picking out the colours, because I actually chose 3 quite dark, tonally quite dark colours, quite similar. And I didn't realise, because these stitches are so small, it's quite hard to differentiate the colours, and instead it comes across more tonal. And of course, if the tones are similar, you know, it doesn't give the variety that I wanted. So I ended up ordering another colour, but it's not come yet. So once I get that colour, if you can see, I've left gaps where the new colour's gonna go. I'm gonna fill that in, and then I just have this top edge to do. Then I can do the stay stitch and do the middle, and it's taking a lot less time, or should I say a lot less days than I thought, because I did the calculations for if I did a couple of hours a day quilting. However, I have devoted all of my time to this and I've not had much else on, so I've literally just been quilting and I absolutely love it. The lighting is a bit funky today, so I'm sorry about that, but I felt in the mood to do a little ramble about how quilting is going so far. So yeah, like I was saying, I'm really enjoying this. I think, or I know that I'm enjoying it a lot more than hand quilting my last quilt, and I think there's a couple of different factors in that. I think, first of all, because I'm using thinner thread. I'm using much thinner thread than I did in my last quilt, which I think is helping me get into a flow of it. My last quilt, I couldn't get in a good flow because the yarn kept tangling and it was quite strenuous to pull the thread through the fabric, and I don't think the fabric was great quality, and I did go for a bit more of an expensive fabric for this one. I think the majority is Rose and Hubble, just the plain colours. I got all my fabric from Oh So Crafty, I think is the website. I'll link it below anyway. But I think the needle is going through a lot more smooth. I'm able to get into a rhythm. And I remember at the beginning when I first started knitting a lot, probably maybe like 4 years ago now, I used to watch a YouTuber, I can't remember her name now, but she knitted with like lace weight a lot, and she was saying how actually sometimes she can knit more because she was more comfortable with the smaller needles and she could get into a flow of it, and it was just a bit easier to knit with. And at the time I was using like DK weight and Aran weight, and I was like, oh, I don't know if I could ever knit with lace weight, but I totally get what she was saying. And after I made a couple of things, I did also feel like I knit faster on smaller needles and thinner yarn, and I feel like the same is true for hand quilting, which is nice to know because I do prefer the look of it, although there obviously is a time and a place for thicker thread and bigger stitches, but I'm really enjoying the look of the smaller stitches and the thinner yarn, and I'm also enjoying the process more, and I think I'm actually going faster, which is interesting. So yeah, and I'll link the thread that I'm using down below. It's a Gotterman hand quilting thread, and I got it from Oh So Crafty, I believe that's what it's called, and it's the cheapest place I could find it online. And as I was saying in the last clip, I decided I wanted to get another colour to hand quilt with, and I was thinking maybe one of the fabric shops in Glasgow has it, so I messaged Manda's and Fabric Bazaar. Fabric Bazaar did not have it, however Manda's did, and they sent me a picture of all the colours they had, and they didn't end up having a colour that I liked anyway, but I asked them how much it was and they were selling it for £8.90, and I got mine for £3.85, I believe, and I just thought that was crazy, but I don't know how they're getting away with selling it for so much money. But yeah, I didn't ask how or why they're doing that, but anyway, I'm getting sidetracked here. What else did I want to say? I think another thing that I'm enjoying is the way it feels, the way the fabric feels. I was worried that I like quilting stitches that are quite close together, and I was worried like how would it feel, how the end fabric drape and all of that, and I was worried that the quilting lines weren't close enough together, even though I know that they're really close together. I'm using like the cheapest of the cheap cotton batting that I could find. I ended up getting it from Amazon. I think I paid like £21 for like the big, I think it was 90 by 108 inches, which is, if you know, that's quite cheap for batting, but it didn't come with like instructions like quilt it so this far apart, how, you know, sometimes there's like 8 inches apart or 4 inches apart. They never told me that. So I was worried that because it's not the best quality, I was worried that I wasn't quilting it enough and it wouldn't wear nicely over time. But I was watching just a quilting documentary that was recommended on YouTube. It just was in the recommended videos, and I was watching it, and it was a woman who all her life had hand quilted, and she was talking about long-armed quilted quilts and she was saying how they're beautiful, but usually with that the stitch lines are really close together, and what that does is it actually gets rid of all of the air in the batting, and it's not warm anymore. It doesn't, you know, hold the heat and sort of do its job as a quilt. And that kind of made me feel better, because I can definitely feel that there is air in the quilt, and it's ended up making a really beautiful fabric. So I'm happy about that, and I just thought that was really interesting. I hadn't really thought about it like that. I am a bit gutted that I'm using this batting, because this is such like a labour of love, like it's a proper heirloom piece. And I do wish I had invested a bit more in the batting. I think going forward, I really want to try bamboo and cotton wadding, because apparently it behaves really nicely and it quilts really nicely. With this wadding, when you pulled the stitches through, the fibres of the wadding do come through, which is annoying, and it was more annoying on my last quilt because I was doing the bright red motifs, and as I was pulling it through, the fibres were just coming through, and because it was like white on red, it was so visible. But anyway, going forward, I really want to try that one, because I think it would eliminate a lot of issues. It has been a hot minute since I have said anything or done anything on this quilt. I think I finished the quilting of it maybe about a week ago, I want to say, and then I embroidered the label thing, and I also decided what binding I wanted, which has taken me the whole time I was quilting it to think of or come to a decision about it. I went back and forth between a couple of different options. I had seen a couple of people do quilt, like a colourful quilt, and then do like a black and white stripe binding, and I thought that might be quite nice, but the more I thought about it, I thought it's not really the vibe. I think it would lean to, I don't know, it would lean into something that I didn't want. Anyway, so then I decided I'd pick one of the colours that was in the quilt to be the binding, but then I took so long deciding what colour. I'd already finished the quilt by then, and then I had to wait on the fabric coming to then finish the binding. But in the end I chose the dark navy colour that was, and my washing machine's singing to me. I chose the dark navy, but that was the colour that was running, like when I was cutting out the fabric it was coming off of my hand, so then I hand washed that fabric and then used it in the quilt. And then, so I wanted to wash this one again, but I decided to just wash it in the washing machine because I couldn't be bothered to wash it by hand. And it's a slightly different colour, and I don't know if that's because I did wash this one in the washing machine and the other one I only washed by hand. So I'm hoping that the other colour is going to wash out to this colour as well, but I think it's close enough that it's not going to be too noticeable. But anyway, I've cut out all of my strips. I've gone for a 2.5 inch, and then I'm going to sew it on folded, then fold it over to the back and hand stitch it down. I've never done it this way. I've always either used the backing to fold over and use as a binding, or do just like a traditional bias binding. But I've seen a lot of people do this, and it seems to be the done thing with the quilts. And also I've been watching a lot of videos where people talk about antique quilts, and the binding seems to be one of the places that really gets the wear and tear. And I suspect the reason why people sew it on folded then fold it over means there's more layers of fabric in the binding and it'll make it sturdier. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I'm going to do because that makes sense to me, so I'm going to do that. I have not like squared off the quilt yet. I've not cut off like the excess backing and wadding, because I want to keep that on when I sew the binding on, and then cut off the excess, because I want the binding to be thicker around the outside, and if I was to cut off the wadding and the backing right off to the top, I would only have 1/4 inch seam allowance around the whole quilt. Whereas if I sew it on, then I can cut the backing and wadding to whatever size I need in order to get the width that I want in the binding, if that makes sense. I'll do a video of me doing it anyway. So yeah, hopefully I'll get that finished today, and then I'll spend the next couple of days hand stitching that down, and then it's finished. Then I will do the reveal, and then after that I will wash it. And I cannot wait to have this quilt. It's getting cold, I want it on my bed, and also I just can't wait to have it done.